Let's do this news roundup. There's other news other than the big dudes. MMA Junkie spoke with some big names this past week. And you know what? This is a good time. The World MMA Awards is out there. MMA Junkie's been kicking ass, not just this year, but for the last 17, 18 years. How about you go to worldmmaAwards.com? We're up for Best Media Source. Nolan King's up for Best Journalist. Give us your vote if you think we deserve it. Obviously, you're here for a reason, but we put out quality work. And that was just my shameless plug there. We got some highlights for you guys, though. The featherweight champ spoke with Mike Bond. Mike, Ilia Topuria, you spoke with him for quite a bit. He had some interesting things to say. Let's start off with O'Malley and Holloway on the same night. And then he had some other stuff to say about the Irishman, but is he kind of going a little too far, with being so brash, or do you kind of like his swag?
I mean, if you thought like the tweets were written by someone else, or if he was just like gets some hot Twitter fingers and is more bold online, no, we have like 30 minutes of video footage of him just saying everything that you could possibly imagine in terms of like aggressive talk towards his opponents, saying he's gonna knock Max Holloway out in the first round, which feels like an unfathomable feat, but if he does it, my God. And then just everything else, saying he would beat O'Malley and Holloway on the same night, which is just a crazy thing to even utter and call Max Holloway an easy fight. I mean, that's just outrageous. But if he goes out and backs it up, I mean, holy hell. But yeah, I mean, the only person he seemed to really like give some respect to was Islam Makhachev when I brought that up. But even then, he's like, I'd show there's levels to this game with him, which is a wild thing to say. So yeah, man, I mean, there's confidence, and then there's crazy, and then there's, I don't know where he falls on this line right now, but I guess rightfully so. He's 15-0, just knocked out Alexander Volkanovski. There's no reason to not believe that you can do whatever you want in the sport, I guess, for him right now. But yeah, to actually hear it and all that stuff, it was a little bit, had me a little bit awestruck, but I mean, good for him. We'll see what happens in the cage on October 26th in Abu Dhabi, but he's building this fight up the right way, man. And I think you don't see Max Holloway, as I kind of alluded to him, going out there like sending stuff in response when he said a couple weeks ago that like Max wasn't signing the contract and that he was the holdup for the fight. Like Max didn't like that, and he made sure to clarify it. So he's getting something out of Max here that you don't see too often in the lead up to these fights, and that just makes it all the more captivating to see what's going to happen at UFC 308. So yeah, I appreciate his time. I appreciate him being so thoughtful and open and honest about what he believes he's going to be doing in the next little bit here. And I mean, obviously, we're never going to see him fight Max Holloway and Sean O'Malley on the same night, but I don't think it's unrealistic that he fights them individually coming up here in the future. So, very bold words from the champ.
And it's all here on this channel, folks. So subscribe and check it out after spinning Back Clique. Of course, Matt Wells, he also told Mike Bond, Conor, who obviously is the big payday, he doesn't even deserve to share the octagon with him right now. He's kind of not interested. Now, obviously, I don't think he would decline the fight, but what did you think of that take? Messing around with the Irishman, that guy can get a little testy on social media.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it earlier, right? How about, everybody's calling or making references to Alex Pereira now. Topuria seems to be the only guy still poking at Conor a lot these days, and it's funny because, I think the size difference, like if we're talking about them actually getting into the cage, like now in 2024, 2025, I think the size difference would be very interesting to say the least. Like what weight would that fight take place at? Conor doesn't seem very interested in coming back down to 155 anytime soon. I don't know. It's interesting. It's funny because I think Ilia has some points when he says that as well, because he's actually out here right now doing the damn thing when Conor's just enjoying the fruits of his labors in 2015, 2016, in those days. But it's always funny. I love the trash talk Ilia brings. This interview is fantastic. I love the Max and Sean line as well. It's funny because the dude, he's talking some mad trash, but he's also going out there and he's backing it up every time he steps into the octagon. So you can't really hate him too much.
Undefeated. I mean, he's on clouds right now. He can say what he wants.
One thing, curious what you guys think. Do we all agree BMF title should not be on the line? Like, it's an undisputed fight, but it is kind of weird if Max loses. But that was, I guess, like one of the newsworthy things that he confirmed that it would not be on the line, which is something that UFC did not share one way or another when they announced this fight officially.
Yeah. I'll tell you this. It feels weird to me because I have a feeling that if Max wins, I have a feeling that there will be a BMF title in that cage, and he's gonna hold two belts over his shoulders, right? So it's kind of weird that Ilia won't have that same opportunity if if he wins. So I don't know.
I like that it maybe gets freed up for another two to bail out the UFC with the strict schedule that they had, but I think Topuria was right in requesting it and making it sound like if you don't do it, then I'm not fighting you. But that blew up in his face. That's why this whole Conor thing, you got it with your trash talk, you got to sound believable. He doesn't deserve to share the octagon with me. You know that if he offers it, if Dana White offers it to him, he would take it because it's a tremendous payday. That's why Michael Chandler's sitting around waiting with his tuxedo to be, the groomsman or whatever. But Nolan, you had a great interview with Henry Cejudo as well. You spent some time with the former flyweight and bantamweight champ who's got options. I mean, I thought he had closed his career to going down to 125, but he told you he's open to it. In fact, he was asking you for advice.
Yeah, I like this move a lot, to be honest with you. I think sometimes when fighters get kind of stuck, like, in their division, he's coming off back-to-back losses. He needs a fresh start. I think moving to a different division makes a lot of sense. The weight cut would have to be something that he talked about it. He said it's not easy. It's something he'd really have to think about if he wants to do that again, because the quality of life of making that sort of cut is brutal. So those are certain things that I can't necessarily jump into an athlete's mind and tell them how they feel or what they have to do. Like, how much of it's discipline, how much of it is your actual biology, how much of it is your age, how much can you not even predict? But at the same time, if all else is equal, like, I think new life at 125 definitely exists for him. He would energize the division. I think if you look at that division right now, there's Pantoja, obviously the champ. You got Asakura, who's coming in. We don't really know where he's going to fit, but it sounds like he could end up with the title fight. And then you've got, guys like Tyra, who's on the come up, and some other contenders that are moving up as well, and Albazi. But for me, I think having Henry in that division would not only give perhaps some of those guys like big fight opportunities. I mean, the Brandon Moreno fight he was talking about, I think would do great numbers especially if they put that in Mexico. Like, what a scene that would be, right? I think there's just so many options there where he could be 1 or 2 wins away from a title, where I don't see that at bantamweight. And I think he was very intelligent when he said, he was very self-aware. He's saying, look at this division right now. Look at how much it's thriving, right? And so for me to come in off 2 losses and try to make a splash again is so difficult. So I really think he should go down to 125. I think it would make a lot of sense as long as his body can do it. I know he struggled in the past, way earlier on in his career. And I don't love big weight cuts, but if he can do it and not totally deplete himself and make himself not as good in the cage, then I think it makes the most sense if he's going for gold.
Mike, do you think his cringe is missed? I mean, it's cringy, right? The word explains itself as like, we don't want to hear it. But in a way, I kind of miss it. And he did stir the pot. Did you miss it? And do you think it'd do well at flyweight?
If he can make the weight, comfortably, as everything Nolan said there is right about him actually being at that division. But if he can make it again, I mean, not something I would advise at 38 years old. That photo I put on the screen a minute or two ago of him looking gaunt as hell in his last cut down to 125, not a great physical look, but he's spent a lifetime cutting weight, all that stuff. If he believes he can do it and wants to put it forward, and he would be missed in that division to have him there. Like, the thing I think that's kind of holding Alexandre Pantoja back a little bit is like he doesn't have these big names, these former champions he can beat. Yeah, he's, the Brandon Moreno thing is a huge feather in his cap, but never got a chance at Demetrius Johnson, didn't get, I don't think, a chance at Davison Figueiredo, things like that. So now for him to get someone like Cejudo, I think would be huge for his resume and could maybe kind of put him over. Cejudo would sell the fight, all that stuff. So I think that would be big for him. And I think 125 needs someone like Henry Cejudo, because right now Pantoja has wiped out everyone there, some of them twice over, and we need someone fresh like Henry Cejudo, I think, for him.
Pantoja's who we coached on The Ultimate Fighter, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I think Nolan, so, yeah. There's that whole element as well.
They're kind of cool, but I think for a title they would fight, it sounds like. Joseph Bose in the chat says, does Cejudo think flyweight is easier now after losing to Merab in February? By the way, Merab's teased flyweight at some point as well. We'll see how it goes at Noche UFC. Frozen like Elsa says, flyweights will pack up Henry. He's done. A few more here. Let's see here. Joseph Boza says he needs the motivation to carry. Marab was a good loss. It feels like he wants to go down because he knows the UFC is desperate with Pantoja beating everybody. Beast Man says, Mike, are you controlling the scenes with the footage and the photos too? You are a talented mofo. Yep, that's right. Guys, we spoke to Bilal Muhammad.
Now we know Mike's burner account name.
I don't have enough time to also leave comments about myself. I mean, come on. I only do that on the other shows.
Bilal Muhammad says Usman needs another win. Fair. He's 0-3, I guess. Shavkat needs another high-profile win because he says, you just beat Wonder Boy. I had to beat 3 more guys after I beat Wonder Boy to get a title shot. He says he wants JDM. Do you like that fight? Is that the right fight to make? In December is when he would want to do it. Matt Wells, what are your thoughts?
I like it. I mean, it makes sense, but also it's kind of interesting that Bilal also said that he wants to be like the Alex Pereira, just to step up and fight any and everybody, but you're also discrediting a number of potential contenders from being worthy of stepping up. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting, a little bit talking out of both sides there, but I think Bilal against anybody, and, you know, if he also gets one in before the end of the year, that'd be great. JDM's right there. I mean, he's ranked number 5 in the UFC rankings. I mean, it would make sense. I mean, we also know that the UFC really doesn't care about the rankings when, you know, you see Khalil Rountree, you get a shot out of nowhere. So, you know, it just it would be a good matchup. I think stylistically it would be interesting to see how Bully would deal with the hands of JDM. So I like it. I like the matchup on paper.
It was interesting, that call out. I wasn't expecting that because I'm just programmed to think that the champions always want the one that's going to sell the most pay-per-views. He wants to be a busy champion, Nolan, is what he said. Unlike Leon Edwards, is what he said. What's the perfect schedule nowadays for the ones that wear gold? You see guys like Izzy and Volkanovski. Wow, they made it to 5 title defenses, but man, at some point it seems like they run into a wall. And then you got a guy like Leon Edwards who just didn't seem to fight very often, and so we all kind of forgot about him. Maybe he didn't enjoy the ride as much as he should have. Do you like Bilal and what he wants to do, and do you think being a frequent defender of the title is the way to go?
Yeah, I think 2 times a year would be ideal for most champions. I think some of the bigger weight classes where the fights end so quick and there's not really these wars, like guys can pull off 3. I think that's part of what's going on with Alex Pereira, right? Like, I think his ability to take so many fights is the fact that he's not getting in these 5-round wars of everybody, you know, Kyle Barallo and Jared Cannonier, if they fought, if that sort of a fight happens in a title fight, like those guys aren't going to be able to, you know, their brains aren't going to hold up to fight 3 times a year. So I appreciate the activity. I know the UFC has a huge calendar too. I'm sure they very much appreciate it, where they promise certain locations to title fights. And I think that's sometimes why we see the BMF title come into play, is that they have kind of a quota to keep up, right? So I'm sure the UFC loves to hear that. I think for somebody to fight at their best, depends on the division, depends on what kind of fights you're getting in. But twice a year for a welterweight, I think would be ideal. If he can squeeze 3, that's great as well. But let's see what kind of wars he's going to get in these title fights before we start trying to put too much pressure on him to push it, you know.
God bless Alex Pereira, man. It was just over a year when he got laid out in Miami, and look what he's done since then. And we're all giving him his flowers, and he deserves it.